Yo, what's up guys, welcome back from the YgoPro Duel video. Next match, Cross-Banlist Cup. Let's take a look, let's zoom in here. Next group, we have Group C. So again, the upper part of the series, right? So that's like, I guess, a more balanced decks. Not as in vomit your entire hand to the board and protect the castle strategy as we know nowadays, and hand traps and so on. Well, two decks, they speak for themselves, I guess. The first one we have here is Dead Return. The deck list is updated compared to the previous one I showed, like, some weeks ago. Should be Jerry Wang's list. First place, Shonen Jump. Can't remember which one it was, but I mean, Jerry Wang, one of the best players, especially the biggest names ever in this game's history. The Cyber Valley one with a Dark Armed Dragon. It's paired up against Empty Jar from 2005. This is the first place of the World's Championship. Back then, again, was it top 8? Not sure about the correct place. But, I mean, again, the deck speaks for itself. It's either Morphing Jar Turbo or Cyber Jar Turbo, and the chances of, at least the consistency of getting, to the strategy of this deck is not that high. I mean, there's like Mystic Tomato, there is Sangan to, crash into your opponent's monsters, for example, and then set one of the jars, and then use stuff like Book of Tayu or the Shallow Grave to get your engine going. And there are a couple of options to deck out your opponent. One of them is Cyber Jar. Again, Cyber Jar, like destroy, at least when it's flipped, destroy all monsters on the field, and then both players pick up at least the top 5 cards of their deck. Any monster that can be normal summoned or set can be normal summoned or set, while the other cards will just be added to the hand. So let's say, you're able to, let's say, resolve Cyber Jar a couple of times, 2-3 times, maybe 4, who knows, thanks to Shallow Grave, Premature Burial, Book of Moon, Spell Reproduction. You're able to reuse your powerful spells. Mainly Book of Tayu, to again reflip your Cyber Jar, right? Just give your opponent a lot of cards, and then there is, I guess, one of the most famous 2-card combos of this game is like Card Destruction and Serial Spell, to force your opponent to draw their cards currently in their hand twice, and that's pretty much most of the time game over. The deck is running other cards, Giant Grenades, for obvious reasons to get rid of your opponent's potential answers, but a Heavy Storm also again speaks for itself. There is Dragged Down into the Grave also. Dragged Down, as for Dark Worlds maybe, or like an FTK strategy, or nowadays, like when was it last used? I believe Infernal Knights had the Dragged Down in the main deck to, both players take a look at both their hands and then discard one card and then draw one card. But at least one of the most important uses for this is, of course, get rid of your opponent's answer. But second is that, let's say, if you're going first, then you need, or at least you want your opponent having a monster in their graveyard because of the Shallow Grave, or Shallow Grave, like a very old school spell card. And both players special summon or reborn a monster in either face down or face up defense position, I think. And you can only use that if your opponent is having a monster in their graveyard. So if you're going first and you want to, use your Shallow Grave, you need to have at least your opponent needs to have a monster in their graveyard, and then there aren't a lot of cards that can force your opponent to do that. There's of course a potential hand trap like Blossom that could set one up in your opponent's graveyard, but other than that, there's like maybe the Morphing Jar. There is Drag Down, there's Card Destruction, but that's how it is. Plasma is a big threat. I think I opened okay, but I believe it was it Reload? I think that didn't really work out, and the trap does shoot getting rid of one of the tomatoes, and again, I have to use my normal summon here for Mystic Tomato. I mean, there is the only reason for this is that back in like 2005, the consistency or the amount of searches you could do to, search your key cards weren't that high, so there weren't too many possibilities to search both Morphing Jar or Cyber Jar. And here is where I make a mistake, I think. I'm attacking into Malicious, right? I just probably, well, there are 3 Pekros, so who knows. But, okay, there's DD Crow also. But the thing is that I should have crashed into Ryza, would have been able to, end on 1500 life points. That's enough to, search Ah, no, I probably would not have survived that. Okay, like Suicide Crash with Sangan as well to get a Surge, but not sure, is that an... Yeah, maybe with 100, but again, long story short, probably should have done that if that wasn't the case, that I, would have lost the game, search either Morphing or Cyberjar, and, use Taiyu, but we see that there is a DD Crow, so... Yeah, maybe Morphing Jar was the better option if that wasn't in the graveyard already, but that's probably my mistake. Okay, let's try to recover. Game number 3, and I open, at least I go first, obviously, so this is good. Definitely very solid. 2 sets, I believe one of the 2 sets is a Shallow Grave, and Spell Reproduction is good. I already have the Book of Taiyu, that's strong, and, Shallow Grave getting back the... okay, yeah, again, what I was talking about, your opponent needs to have a monster in their graveyard, and thanks to Drag Down, I was able to get it back from the graveyard with Spell Reproduction. Spell Reproduction is very similar to Magical Stone Excavation, but Magical Stone Excavation was pretty much the more expensive card. Not sure it was released back in 2005, but I believe it was like released maybe as a tournament pack, like promo or what. But yeah, it was like, like a regular player would not have had like access to that card. And the difference is that Magical Stone Excavation was generic, so you could discard any 2 cards, while Spell Reproduction needs you discarding 2 spells. So that's somewhat of a limitation, especially as you've seen before. This deck had access to Double Night Assailant, and that's quite broken. Getting stuff like Card Destruction, Graceful Charity, Feather the Phoenix, right? Like discard Night Assailant, get back another copy of another Night Assailant or another flip in the graveyard, and that's quite strong. Again, the infamous, Card Destruction Serial Spell, it's a cost. A Serial Spell states you need to discard your entire hand, so you won't be forced to draw the same amount of cards. Let's say if you're both your opponent and you are low on life points. But that wasn't the case. So again, very strong opening here. Pot of Greed, ability for Cyberjar. So again, very, very strong. This is potentially game over here. But I'm not able to draw into like Giant Grenade, Heavy Storm. So I need to take the risk. Set the Cyberjar going for Taiyu. Try to flip it face up. But get blown away by the Wing Blast. And okay, that's not that threatening. But well, actually this. It just, again, sets me back by a lot. The Cyberjar on top of my deck, and as you see in my hand, there aren't really any live plays ready, so my next play would have been set Cyberjar and pass. Again, that you're giving a potential fast OTK deck more turns to potentially OTK, and that's something you don't want. And here, right, so I scoop because of the what is it called, Destiny Hero Dasher in the graveyard, and the Demok was drawn off of the draw phase. You could like reveal Demok, special summon Demok, get back a spell from the graveyard, and go from there. Dimension Fusion was there for Stratos, pop the back row. Whatever, I don't really matter. At least it doesn't really matter. You could search like Plasma, get rid of a Demok on the field, reborn it, or special summon with Dimension Fusion. So I was like, nah, whatever. I'm not going to win this one. So yeah, game number 5, and I open up really, really well. But again, as I've mentioned before, I don't think, maybe I've missed something, but I don't think it was the case. I wasn't able to get one monster in my opponent's graveyard, again, to potentially, use Shallow Grave. If I was able to, maybe Drag it down or Card Destruction, whatever, I probably would have won this one, because again, I have enough cards. I have like Feather of the Phoenix, Premature Burial, I have the potential Night Assailant for the discard cost of Feather of the Phoenix, so this probably would have been my game. But again, that's one of the big weaknesses, I guess. Okay, it's like, it could be an FTK, but if you're not having those cards that kind of forces your opponent having monsters in their graveyard, or getting that in their graveyard, well, then again, if you're playing maybe against a more, recent deck, playing hand traps like Veil or Blossom or whatever, you can kinda bank on your opponent opening the hand trap. But yeah, this is game over, and this is pretty much, I believe one of the biggest plays that this deck is known for, like Cyber Valley, either because it's so flexible. It prevents your opponent from attacking, well, it like negates the attack, banishes itself, draw a card. You can like banish a card from your hand, banish one copy of Valley on the field to stack a card from the graveyard to the top of the deck, basically a Feather of the Phoenix, while at the same time banish another monster, draw 2. So the card was insane, especially with like Dimension Fusion legal, triple return from a different dimension also legal, triple Dark Arm, that's quite crazy. Yeah, indeed. But I think we have a well-deserved winner, seeing that both decks are, well, consistency speaking, well, the dead return feels indeed more consistent compared to the FTK or, you know, empty chart deck, but I mean, it was going well, and breaking is of course bigger for the empty chart deck, while, you know, compared to dead return. So the next matchup, we have Plan Synchro versus Infernity, the Exceed version for, you know, from 2014. So again, like always, feel free to leave your predictions in the community tab. Okay. Guys, that's it. Thanks for watching. Feel free to leave a comment or like if you enjoyed the video. Lithium signing out. Peace.